Howdy, y'all. Joe Hills here, recording as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee, and welcome to the HermitCraft. This is the 91st episode of HermitCraft, or maybe the 90th. Nope, 91st, number 1, baby. Also a 9 immediately before it. So, what are we going to talk about in this episode? We're going to talk a little bit about some more stuff that I've thought about since PAX East. In this particular case, we are going to be discussing there's a hierarchy of needs described by a man named Victor Maslow, who is, of course, famous for escaping from the concentration camp in Casablanca. And anyway, what he tells Rick is that there's kind of a hierarchy of needs that people have. At the bottom, kind of like the food pyramid, the grains of the hierarchy of needs is physiological needs, which is being able to maintain, your body temperature or, not being on fire. I think is the way that Randall Munroe of XKCD put it. Having no immediate imminent peril. Not drowning would be another great example. Not watching your body slowly dissolve in acid. A lot of the physiological needs that you guys have, like being able to not suffocate, are fairly well met. Then the next tier above that is safety, and that's kind of a buffer between your imminent state or your current state and imminent physiological harm. Now, safety could be something like, okay, now that I'm not on fire, I'm going to go live in an apartment that has sprinklers to keep me not on fire. Or now that I'm not drowning, I'm going to get away from people who try to drown me by living in a house with doors. Doors are a great way to stop people from drowning you. You just got to be one step ahead. Like that Aladdin fella. Now, above that is belonging, which is kind of like the importance of having a family, and or a group or a tribe. And at PAX, we see this great sense of belonging. Everybody there, in some way, loves gaming. They love games, and they are just thrilled to all belong at the convention together. And this is true of a lot of the conventions I've attended. Let's just quickly make sure that we've got our hierarchy of needs covered, though, by ensuring that there are no imminent creepers, because not being blowed up is also right down there in the physiological category. Great. So having assured our safety as a buffer against our physiological destruction, I will now continue. Let's see what we got up here in the gravel layer. A steam. Now, this is not like a steam pipe from, one of them mods with the Railcraft. This is like, okay, now that I feel like I belong in a group or a family or a community, and I feel like I'm an important member or a confident member, and, that's the sort of thing that comes up, over time. You build esteem, you build confidence, and honestly, I know a lot of kids who might watch the show might feel like, I don't really have a strong sense of self-esteem yet. Don't worry about that. If your self-esteem isn't great in high school, worry about that, but don't freak out about that, because honestly, you're not as awesome as you may yet be. Seriously, I am so much more awesome now than I was 10 years ago or even 5. People say, oh yeah, high school, best years of your life. If you're in the decline already, don't be in the decline already. And that moves us on to fulfillment, which I ran out of different materials on my person, so that one's a fun, happy wool. And fulfillment is kind of things like spiritual fulfillment or creative fulfillment. I was confident enough in my abilities, and I had a strong backing from my then, fiance or whatever. So I was able to pursue creative fulfillment in this Minecraft series, making videos for you guys. And this is where things get crazy, because throughout the entire hierarchy of needs, it's kind of one of those things where people are always looking up at the people who are one step above them and going, oh man, I wish I was that one guy. I wish I was up there. If you're down here being drowned, you're like, I really wish I was someone not being drowned right now. I wish I was somebody in a house with doors. And then if you're the guy with the house with the doors and the money for the locks and all that, that guy's like, well, this is nice that I'm not imminently dying or worrying about death, but getting a steady paycheck every day well, who gets a paycheck every day? I guess he could be a day laborer. Okay, no, day laborers have an excellent sense of community. Okay, so this fellow though, this is like Fight Club right here. The guy's in Fight Club. He hasn't founded Fight Club yet. But he is John's safe guy inside of a house. No, Jack's. Yes, I should know this. Anyway, it's not enough to just get money and live in a house. You want to be a part of a community. And that doesn't necessarily mean a family, but there are different types of communities. And this guy here, he's like, well, I like that I'm a part of my church or a part of my softball team, but I really want to be a strong individual that contributes, not just a member, but a contributor, because there are some people in a group that kind of take more than they give. And so, like, then the guy who's up here who's like, oh man, I'm doing all this awesome stuff to help my group, but I want to do stuff to help myself. Not in a terribly selfish way, but like, sometimes to be an awesome creative person, you have to say, I want to make things for people that they don't know they want yet. I'm going to make things for myself, even though no one else says they want them, in hopes that they'll want them. Like, I want to write poetry, and I don't think anyone else is going to like it. They don't think they're going to like it, but I think I'd be happier if I wrote poetry. So we end up all the way up here at the top at fulfillment, and the guy who's drowning is like, man, look at that jerk up there making poetry. That's kind of that's kind of ludicrous. How can anyone have time to make poetry while I'm drowning? And so here we kind of get into crazy land. Fulfillment is such an insane part of the hierarchy of needs because it essentially stretches on forever. The other ones have different kind of categorical top ends. Like, once you're no longer drowning or on fire, you're moved up a rung. But from fulfillment, it's like, well, what do you consider fulfillment? And how do you handle other people who are at different stages of this pyramid, or even on the same stage? Because, like, okay, here's the best way I can put this. Most people who are on the physiological stage they have a kindred spirit with the other people around them. Whole bunch of people who are, like, actively dying together, like in an earthquake or a disaster, like, people who know they're going to die together in a disaster or something. There's some, like, okay, we're all in this together. So they actually end up belonging in this weird way, even though they're all dying. But anyway, people who are part of a community are part of this community together, and they're all just in that community. Once you get up here to fulfillment, though, it gets crazy, because there's all these kind of strata or whatnot. And I kind of realized this week at PAX that it's almost like people are in different orbits. Like, once you kind of get to fulfillment, it's kind of like you've got a rocket ship and you've left the ground. Like, everything down here is just kind of establishing life on Earth. But you've gotten into your rocket and you've entered orbit, and you're just like, I want to see how far I can go. I want to see how far I can push. And you don't know where that's going to take you. But you can definitely say, okay, here's a slightly higher orbit than I'm in now. Like, I would never have believed that I would be a speaker at PAX East. Or, like, I would have said, like, oh, yeah, well, by the time I'm a speaker at PAX East, it'll be because I'm this awesome guy who's running his own company, and, I've probably got, like, 8 Ferraris. I don't know what I'd do with them. Probably stack them up like in Jenga and then have people pull them out. Now, that's not enough Ferraris. Hey, okay, so here's my top level, is getting enough Ferraris that I could play Jenga with them with some sort of cranes or forklifts. No, that's actually insanely wasteful. I'm not really going to do that. I feel like I should say that, because just in case anyone's watching who can afford to do that, no. Don't do that. Give that money to people who are down here on fire and drowning or dying of malaria or something else. But, okay, so 5 years ago, you told me, okay, PAX East panelist. I'd be like, dude, that means I made it, But you really can't quantify what making it is, or like the things that you think might be reflective of making it aren't necessarily actually making it. And so, for example, I'm really frustrated right now. Like, okay, I'm putting all this time into my YouTube channel, I'm putting all this time into my day job, and putting all this time into my family. There's just not enough hours in the day. I really hope that by the time I had a family, I'd be able to make my fun stuff, my comics and my Pitfalls and Penguins and my YouTube. I was hoping that I'd be able to do this, 40 or 50 hours a week and then just not have to do my day job. And I didn't hit that mark. And, that's frustrating for me. But, and I see other people who are able to do YouTube full time. And I'm just like, oh man, they're up there in these like higher orbits, further out than I am. And I'm like, man, I want to be where those guys are. But, they've got their own sets of issues, too. And this is one of those things where I guess kind of in some ways what I'm talking about is kind of mutual understanding or compassion. Like, it's hard to empathize with people who are like, whoa, I'm way up here and, I still have problems. But really, I'm here at the fulfillment level and I'm realizing, well, I've got all these problems with my day job and with all these other things I'm trying to juggle. Just making time for my family, and it's just one of those things. Like no matter how high people get up on this fulfillment thing, there's still going to be some level of problems, and it's important to not like compare where you are on this pyramid to anyone else. Like if you see somebody who's doing better than you, as long as they are not getting there by hurting other people. Is somebody hitting my doorbell? Is Red Eyes in my base? I think Red Eyes is in my base. I was going to say, as long as somebody didn't get up there by hurting other people, then that's cool. Or is there a zombie in there? I heard a zombie. Okay, only Red Eyes is on. Okay, I found the zombie. What is the zombie doing? Well, now he's being killed by an arrow. Okay. So that was slightly weird. I was expecting Red Eyes to just come out of being invisible and kill me at any moment. Not that Red Eyes is a bad fella, but... Okay, that was a little bit more stressful than I intended for this video to go. It's one of those things like, if you're safe but you don't feel like you belong, don't ever envy the people who do belong. Don't compare yourselves to them in that way. Just kind of look at how they became successful at what they did. And as long as it wasn't something that hurt anyone else to get there, try to learn from it and, move forward with your own life. And, because, like, it's so crazy how awesome some of the people that come to PAX East are. And they do all these incredible, awesome things. And my problem isn't necessarily that I'm like, oh, I'm comparing myself to them and I'm like, oh, I can't believe they're there and I'm not. My problem is I'm just like, I'm so frustrated that I can't get to where they are right now. I'm frustrated with myself. I feel like I'm holding myself back because, like, for example, I have a bunch of student loan debt. So I have to pay a lot of money every month. For those of you guys who don't know what student loan debt is, that's like, okay, so I owe money every month toward paying for my college degree that I got a few years back. And so I'm just frustrated with myself. I'm like, oh, if I hadn't gone to such an expensive school or if I'd paid this stuff off faster or earlier, then I'd have more economic freedom right now. But what I've kind of realized with this whole orbit analogy is, you know how you have to achieve escape velocity to, like, leave the orbit of the Earth, or to move even to a higher orbit. You have to have a certain velocity as a rocket shipman or rocket ship woman. I don't know. I guess the term would be astronaut. As an astronaut, you need to have a certain velocity, and to accelerate, acceleration is force times mass. Essentially, the more baggage you have, the more weight you have, the harder it is to accelerate forward. So, somebody who has a lot of expensive habits is going to have a harder time accelerating forward. In my case, my expensive habit is having gone to college several years ago. And even though I feel sometimes like I'm not necessarily moving to a higher orbit as quickly as I would like, if I actually look at the numbers, my loan statements and everything, I'm paying off a ton of this debt, every month. So even though I'm not necessarily moving to a higher orbit right away, I'm actually making the decrease in the inertia of my vessel such that when I do move up, or like every month I get closer and closer to not having to pay loans. And then it'll be easier for me to move forward or upward or what have you. And so I guess kind of my point with this is, even if you feel like you're going in circles sometimes, check to make sure, even if it doesn't feel like you're making progress, you might be. And don't get despondent about that. Sometimes you got to say, okay, even if I'm not moving, well, that's a terrible, I already made an analogy. You don't need a second analogy. No second analogy for you. None. You may enjoy your first analogy about the spaceships. And so, to quickly recaptivate you, without rambling for another hour, go do awesome things, hang out with awesome people, help people who are below you in the hierarchy of needs, aspire to be as cool as you possibly can. Just go make stuff. The more you make stuff, the more you practice making stuff, the more you live your life with a positive economic outlook. If you're coming out $5 ahead every month, it's way better than coming out $5 behind. Anyway, till next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring.